Man, possibly high and probably naked, charged with DUI and leaving scene of crash involving property damage.
No, I was the new driver. I hadn't done mushrooms since I was, in high school. I had a 3-day-old black Ferrari 430 Spider. When you're tripping, things just get a little trippy. Donuts all over the place, and the cops roll in straight onto me. I get out of the car, and I've got no clothes on. And the doctor the next day said it sounded like I was speaking in tongues. Listen, I was in my first rehab when I was 16 years old. I was just about homeless. I ended up moving in with a woman that wound up being my first wife. I was driving around with $500,000 worth of gold Krugerrands in the trunk of my car. It's another thing when you're homeless and you're straight. I was almost murdered in a hotel room. I was hogtied. I decided I'm going to take all my clothes off. It was literally like I got called out by Christ in front of 6,000 people.
Jeff Stearns, connected through cars. If they're bigwigs, we'll have them on the show. And yes, we'll talk about cars and everything else. Here he is now, Jeff Stearns.
Let me read this headline to you. Man, possibly high and probably naked, charged with DUI and leaving scene of crash involving property damage. Sound familiar?
Yeah, it sounds a little familiar.
Was that you, Tony?
If you plan on reading the article, I think you'll see my name in it. I was there. I was actually there.
Now, were you a witness, or how were you there?
No, I was the new driver.
You were the perp.
Unfortunately, I forgot my clothing for that ride.
Well, we got to hear the story, Tony.
I had started a dog rescue with a girl that I was dating, and it was her birthday. I hadn't done mushrooms since I was, in high school. And a buddy of mine gave me a big bag of shrooms, and it was her birthday. So instead of being responsible with them, which I didn't even know I should be because it had been so long since I had done them, we ate all of them.
How big is a big bag of mushrooms?
10 grams.
10 grams of magic shrooms. Okay.
Yeah. So if you listen to Terrence McKenna, who was like the one of the kind of long time psychedelic gurus, 5 grams of mushrooms is what he termed as a heroic dose. So I was in the shower and they started to kick in a little bit. And my girlfriend at the time comes in right when I get out, and she pulls me into the garage. I had a 3-day-old black Ferrari 430 Spider, and drags me into the garage. We get in the car. Now, she's got me in the car nude. They're starting to kick in. She's begging me to just go for a ride around the block. It was a new car.
Now, is she partaking also, or is she?
Oh, she's partaking. Yeah, she's partaking also.
Okay.
She's partaking also. So, we're just sitting in the garage, and then, I pull the car out and pull it in front of her home. And we're just sitting there, with the top down, the stars are out, we're just in the driveway. And she convinces me that I need to take her for a ride to her friend's house, which obviously was not going to happen. And I insisted that, hey, if I drive like this, I'll probably wind up in jail. Now, that was kind of, I should have listened to myself right then. But as the shrooms kept kicking in more and more, I was like, okay, yeah, we'll go around the block, no problem. So around the block, we were in Del Rey, and around the block, we came out onto Atlantic Avenue in downtown Del Rey, made a left on Federal Highway going north up towards Palm Beach, and we were on our way. On the way up to Palm Beach, we were traveling, at rapid rates of speed. Once I got up into Palm Beach, you come around a big turn on A1A coming up into Ocean, and then the next thing you know, you're right on the ocean. On your left, you've got all the huge houses. We've been doing 100 plus miles an hour all the way up Federal Highway. So the cops were already looking for me, obviously.
Now, are you in a towel or nothing?
Nothing. And thank God, I didn't know, but thank God she brought a pair of pink seersucker shorts. She had them on the floor of the car, but I'll get into that in a little bit because that was a little That was like my saving grace when when everything went down. We came around the corner. There's like a circle. We came around the corner. Now we're on Ocean and flying up into Palm Beach. And I see a cop car coming the other way, coming at me. We booked a quick U-turn, came around, back around, traveling south. And as we came around the turn, there were 3 cops there to block me in. So it was kind of like one of those boom, 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 as far as, just kind of dodging those guys and booking out on Southern Boulevard towards West Palm.
And you didn't come in contact with, you didn't like graze or hit any of these cars.
No,
you just
I
avoided
grazed. No, I had already run over a couple of stop signs on my way up to Palm Beach because it was just, when you're tripping, things just get a little trippy. So the car was already banged up, but when I came around, I caught something there because I got, it's in I think it's in that, it's definitely in the police report. And I think it's in the article too. But, we went out Southern Boulevard, at a rapid rate of speed and the cops didn't chase me. So now we're heading up towards, West Palm. And this dog rescue, now that rescue today is the largest no-kill shelter in the country. But we had, it was ours before we turned it over to this woman. It's called Big Dog Ranch now. They bring in dogs from China, from Puerto Rico with the hurricanes. She could take in now up to 1,000 dogs. But we took her dogs originally. She had a bunch of Weimaraners in her house. This is like a highfalutin Palm Beach woman. But in any way, we're on our way out to, we were going to go to the rescue. So we had 70 dogs there at the time. So we're heading to the rescue.
You're not thinking anything about that you kind of went through a blockade.
No.
You went through and now we're going to the dog rescue.
No, now I feel like I'm driving around in a missile.
Okay.
Right? The inside of the car looks like a spaceship. I'm tripping.
I know Ferrari 430.
Yeah, I'm tripping pretty good.
Okay.
So I didn't realize how demolished the car already was from running over a couple of the stop signs on the way up there. So we're heading out towards the rescue. And when we get to, it was in Wellington at the time. So when we get up, and I couldn't tell you like exactly where we were, but somehow we got sidetracked. And there's we go past a park. And there's a sign on the gate of the park that says closed, and they had the gate was locked. So she's like, parks should never be closed. And I'm like, I agree. So we decided that driving through that gate into the park was a good idea. So we go flying through the gate, doing donuts all over the place. I pull the car up and down here, like you'll have parking on one side, then you'll have grass, and then you'll have parking on the other side. So I'll see if I can do this for you, kind of like this. So it got to where I couldn't move the car, and I didn't know why, and I didn't care, and we were just sitting in there. The stars are out. It's a perfect night, and, we're just sitting there listening to the music. And then the next thing you know, I'm facing this way. You've got the grass here, and the cops roll in straight onto me. And they asked me to get out of the car over the loudspeaker. So my first reaction was, well, hey, I got away from the first group of cops. I'm going to get away from these guys too. And I go to move the car, but the car doesn't move. It's just like, it's kind of like doing that. So they're asking me to get out of the car. So I get out of the car and I've got no clothes on. So the cops like, hey, put some clothes on. And thank God she had brought the seersuckers, which is perfect for Palm Beach, by the way. I mean, if you're going to be in any pair of shorts, you might as well be in a pair of pink seersuckers, right? She throws me the shorts. I put the shorts on. And the cop comes over to me and he's like, he can tell that I don't smell of alcohol. And he's like, what is going on with you guys? Now, the car is demolished. Okay. I mean, demolished. It was totaled. The car was totaled. I didn't hit another car, nothing. The car was completely totaled.
The car's the Lamborghini from the Jordan Belfort lewd scene coming
Dude,
home from
it was
country club.
completely fucking destroyed. Okay. I probably ran over more than a couple of stop signs on the way up there. Plus I had just blasted through this gate. Okay. On top of that. And done a bunch of donuts. But I look back while I put the shorts on, and while I'm putting the shorts on, I look back, and the rear wheel on the driver's side, the tire wasn't gone. The entire wheel, the whole thing is off the car, which obviously is why I couldn't escape. He asked me what I'm doing up there. I tell him, listen, we're going up to our dog rescue. And he's like, dog rescue? What's a dog rescue? And I said, like a dog, like rough. So when you read that article, you'll read in there that she says I was barking like a dog, which I wasn't barking like a dog. And I had just done a little too much of, I didn't have any respect for mushrooms. I didn't realize if you want to be responsible with them, you should really weigh them first, so you know exactly how much you're being dosed. So, to make a long story short, they arrested me, took me in. Apparently when they put me in the holding tank, I was told the next day they moved me, because apparently I went like deep into where I was at and must have been peaking while I was in jail. And the doctor the next day said it sounded like I was speaking in tongues, and they moved me out of that original holding cell and put me in my own. And that doctor had come in the morning and had asked me, before they released me, had asked me who's the president. They asked me, a bunch of different questions before they were going to release me. So that's kind of the Ferrari story there, Jeff.
Okay, so this recording will be public. You've got kids.
I've got kids.
What are their ages?
I've got 3 girls. I've got a 27, 26, and a 24.
Okay, so they know this. They know this.
They know. Listen, at the time, now, you can look back and, it's a great story now. But at the time with my children, and believe it or not, like, I had a great time that night, as like totally twisted as that sounds. But the aftermath of it was not good. They heard from their classmates. So that was something that, was not a fun day for me when I had to go through that with them. I had, issues with alcohol and cocaine my entire life, and, I'll be sober 8 years in August. So,
congrats on that. So, in the end, you're a sober guy. I'm sober 26 years. Hey, look, in the end, I'm assuming that if one more guy or gal can get sober or see what's going on in their life, or see the ridiculous or the chaos or the unmanageability, that would probably excite you. Why are you okay telling this on a broadcast like this?
Well,
what do you get out of it?
Listen, I was in my first rehab when I was 16 years old. And I've struggled. I'm 57 now. And for the most part, my kids have never even seen me take a drink. I never drank in front of them. I never, did blow in front of them. Nothing. They've never seen me under the influence of anything. I think that, there's a few, listen, I went to WallStreet at one point in my life where, I was just about homeless. I ended up moving in with a woman that wound up being my first wife, going to WallStreet, making $1.5 million a year. I'd made $1.5 million my first year in the business. So, and you brought up Jordan Belfort. And one of the funny things is I met Jordan Belfort's first wife the same night that I met my wife, at a place called Canistell's in the city. And I guess they were on the rocks at that point in time, because I wound up with her phone number, and, we won't go into the rest of that story. But, the struggle that I've had with my own addiction. I went from being, big time Wall Street guy with a house in the Hamptons on 3 acres on the water, the whole routine, with the Ferraris, to a homeless crackhead, living on the street in Miami, actually we used to call it the little town of Lincoln. A buddy of mine and we wound up, picking up a crack pipe after not smoking that shit since I was a kid. I mean, back in the 80s, in the late 80s, I was introduced to smoking coke by a buddy of mine who has since overdosed and is not here anymore, and had issues with that back in those days. And then 18 years after not smoking it, just wound up in a guy's house, and he was smoking it out of a bong. And I hit that bong, and that was it. 11 months later, $500,000 later, I was, I'd lost 80 pounds, was living on the street in Miami. And things got really ugly, and just a lot of just completely insane, just a lot of, you get followed around. I was driving around with 500 grand worth of gold Krugerrands in the trunk of my car, and cashing those in $9,900 at a time, and just partying. So when that happens and you've got a ton of money and you're smoking blow, you get followed around by every freak. I had more freaky shit going on that was just bizarre, like crazy, stories. And, I'm in the process of writing a book. I've been doing that for 7 years. So I doubt I'll ever get there. I'm a 2-finger typer. I've got, 11,000 words written. And that's a difficult process. So, I'm probably not going to end up finishing that book. I was actually on the street in Miami, and I was a paranoid freak. Like, I used to laugh at those people that got paranoid, but then I became that person. Everybody was the FBI, everything. And I wouldn't beg for money. I would never ask for money. And a woman came up to me and handed me a $20 bill. And she just looked at me and she says, "You'll know what to do with this." And for whatever reason, I don't know why, but I got myself to this train station in Miami, and I took a train up to Delray Beach, and I signed myself into a detox. It's called DAF. It's public detox. So I went to that detox, got out. I wound up getting into a halfway house. And the way that worked out is my best friend from New Jersey, we lived, together when we were kids, and, sold vacuum cleaners door to door for Electrolux, whatever. He's an attorney now. I called him. Now he lives in Western Jersey. And through a set of circumstances, I was back on the street, but now I'm straight, right? It's one thing if you're getting drinking and drugging and you're homeless. It's another thing when you're homeless and you're straight. And that's when the horror of being homeless is really it's like mind boggling. You can't even believe that you're in the position. And I called him, and I was like, hey, his wife picked up the phone. I'm like, "Hey, Cindy, is Joe there?" She's like, "Tony?" I'm like, "Yeah." She's like, "He's not here." She's like, "Are you okay?" Now, she had known that things weren't going well. They've been, talking to my parents, and, my mom's sober 42 years. My father is sober, I think, 39 years. And, good Irish Catholic boy. My sister did her 21andMe, 99.8% Irish, which is like almost impossible. But I've got the 23andMe to prove it. So anyway, so he called, Joe ends up calling me. Now, there were still payphones back then. So Joe calls me. I'm just standing by the payphone. Joe calls me. He's like, "Hey, what's going on? You all right?" I'm like, "Nah, I'm not okay. I'm on the street." He's like, "Yeah, no, you've been on the street for a while." I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Well, where are you?" And I'm like, "I'm in Lake Worth." And he's like, "Okay." He's like, "Well, where in Lake Worth well, first I said Florida. So he goes, "Yeah, well, of course you're in Florida." He's like, "Where?" I'm like, "I'm in Lake Worth." And he's like, "Where in Lake Worth are you?" I'm like thinking to myself, like, what the hell is he asking me this for? And I was on like Federal and whatever block it was, 10th, 11th, 12th, whatever it was. And he's like, and then I hear him turn to somebody that turned out to be another buddy of mine. We were all in AA. We were all golfers. I mean, shit, at the time I was still a scratch handicap in that kind of condition. I couldn't have played to it then, but So I hear him say, "Hey, how far are we from Federal and 12th? And then I hear my other buddy, Alan, go, "Tell him we'll be there in 2 minutes." They were literally around the corner.
Guardian Angels.
Guardian Angels. Scooped me up, took me down to Delray. I went into one of the AA clubhouses, picked up a phone number off the wall, and they paid to get me into that halfway house. I wound up working for a buddy of mine. He had a call room. Started working for him, built his room. After I was 6 months sober, I raised 180 grand. I started a company that got people out of credit card debt. And 3 years later, I had 400 employees. With that 180 grand that I raised, we did 81 million in revenue, 19 million to the bottom line. So, I got back on my feet again. Everything was, everything changed, Jeff. Everything changed.
Look, this is going to be a crazy question, but what would someone be surprised to know about you?
Anybody that meets me, like I'll give you my girlfriend, for example, we've been together for 2.5 years. Like, she just can't even picture me like that, It's just, I think anybody that met me that heard my story. I mean, I was almost murdered in a hotel room. I was hogtied. Supposedly, I wound up getting arrested down in South Beach and wound up in jail in Miami. And one of the guys that was the cop in the pod, his kid had played for the Redskins, and I can't remember. Santana Moss's dad was the guy that was the cop that was in the pod, and one of the kids in there was supposedly there's a running back for the Ravens. Used to play for the Ravens. He played for the U. I can't remember the guy's name, but I met supposedly what is one of his nephews when I was in jail. But I ended up, getting some money when I got out of jail. I finagled, a pretty good amount of cash. It's the only time in my life I've ever, basically taken money from somebody. I made amends to him afterwards. I paid him back and everything, but I got one of my ex-stockbroker clients to wire me 13 grand after I got out of jail. And wound up hooking up with my dealer again. Wound up in Homestead, Florida, meeting one of the kids I was in jail with. His name was Mike Williams. We called him Tupac in jail. He looked exactly like him. But I went down to Homestead after I got out, took a train down there and partied with this guy for a couple of days. And the day I left him, he got killed by the cops. So thank God I got out of there when I did. But I wound up going up into South Beach. I had the cash now, and I was meeting my dealer. And I got a call from Willis McGahee. That was his name. So supposedly Willis McGahee's nephew, he gave me a call. He's like, "Hey, I'm with some friends. Hey, what are you doing?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm partying. You want to come to the hotel room?" So he comes up there with a friend of his and the guy's girlfriend, and they get into the room. Now I wasn't stupid. I hid the coke, right? So I left like an 8-ball out. I had 9 ounces of coke, and the rest of it I shoved in in the garbage pail underneath the bag. They put the bag. I put it under the bag in the garbage pail. So I was taking a hit, and this guy chokes me out from behind. And I came to with, I was hogtied with the sheets, and I had a pillowcase tied around my neck. And that's how I came out of, being choked out by these guys or by that guy. And, I didn't even give a shit about that. I went to the garbage pail and the coke wasn't there. And that was, but I was very happy. They left the 8-ball out. They just took the 9 ounces and took off. The reason I was writing the book was really, I had somebody approach me about this. They took the book and they put it into ChatGPT and came out with like I don't know what the hell you call a screenplay, whatever the hell you would say,
or treatment or something.
No. They put it in a format in ChatGPT where it could be like a Netflix special.
Okay. So the whole screenplay.
It would do voiceover, and then it literally would, it had names of characters, based on, and the whole routine.
That's an incredible technology.
Yeah, it's like insane.
I was reading about it last night.
He's talking to me about, you could make like, this is like a Hollywood guy, he's a Hollywood tech guy. And, he starts talking about, we could make money doing this. And that was never the purpose for writing the book. The reason I started the book was, if you could give one person hope that is in the situation that I was in, that, they can get sober and anything is possible through the man upstairs, that, you could turn your life around. And I had a situation. I had I'll just give you another quick story. So I'm living in Woodfield Country Club in Boca, which again is like one of the hoity-toity country clubs. And my wife was away with the kids. This was 22 years ago, 21 years ago. So she's in Chicago with the kids. I go meet my buddy at the pool, and, we dropped, a bunch of ecstasy. We're partying at the pool. We wind up going back to his house, and I guess, his mother was there, and I was not getting her name right over and over and over again. So I was politely asked to leave. I got in my car, took out his neighbor's mailbox, and then I go out the back guard gate at Woodfield, and I literally drove right through the arm of the guard gate. I didn't even hit the gate. I hit the arm of the guard gate and crashed the car into the house that the guards are in. So this was another great story. So I ran away from the scene. I jump over, like there's a wall there. I jump over the wall. They found me 45 minutes later in a tree in somebody's backyard, sopping wet. And they take me back to the scene of the accident. Now, you won't read about that one because from what I'm told, because they lost sight of me for 45 minutes, they couldn't place me drunk at the scene. So they take me, I come out of the tree. Now, I don't remember any of this, none of it. They take me back to the scene. And apparently I didn't like being sopping wet. And I don't know what the nudity theme here is, but I decided I'm going to take all my clothes off, which I did. And they wrapped a raincoat around me, and apparently I didn't like that either. I took that off, ran across the street, jumped through these hibiscus bushes. I still have scars from that. Jumped into a lake because all the communities, there's a whole bunch of different communities in the club, and they've all got lakes, different, they're all built around lakes and this and that. And I jumped in the lake and I swam away, came out of the blackout, kneeling on the side of a car, naked, obviously, with another car, pulling into the driveway. And I'm like, where the fuck am I right now? So I eventually got to the club and stole a golf cart and drove it home, passed out. I wake up at about midnight and I'm like, I get one of these bad feelings like, oh, fuck. And I had that feeling a million times, like something bad had happened. So I go out and I'm like, where's my car? And I go out and I look in the driveway and I'm like, fuck, what am I going to do? I get on my bike and I drive and I ride my bike to the front main gate. And the guard at the main gate, I knew him. He sticks his hat on and goes, oh, Mr. Shea, how are you? And I said, I don't know. How am I? And he goes, on the record or off the record? And I'm like, off the record. And then he tells me what happens. What happened. And I was like, shit, man. My wife comes the next day from being up in Chicago with her folks and my kids. I've got, cuts all over my face, all over my arms. She's, I'm wearing sunglasses. She's like, what happened? I tell her the dog dragged me through the bushes. My kids are there. I couldn't, tell her what happened. So when I finally got to tell her what happened, of course, she was completely mortified. Now I had to go in front of the homeowners association. So now she and we have to go in front of the homeowners association. Please, Mr. Shea, could you explain to us what happened? Okay. So I, just told him I had a drinking problem. I'm going to handle the drinking problem, this, that, and the other thing. Now, my ex-wife's mother I was brought up Catholic, right? Sit, kneel, sit, kneel. Her mother was a Christian, and my ex-wife was brought up as a Christian. And every Christmas, we'd go to Chicago. My marriage was on the rocks. The stock market is crashing. I just blown up my own account. And my mother-in-law comes down. Her name is Laverne, right? So she comes down. Now, just a great classic name, right? Laverne comes down, and she asks me if I'll take her to church. Now, obviously, she's concerned about her kid and her grandkids, right? Because, the marriage isn't going well at this point in time. I wasn't happy. She wasn't happy. Things just were not going well. So, she asked me if I'll take her to church. So I'm like, sure, Laverne, you want to go to church? We can go to church. But the only church that I know down here, I hear it on the radio, is this place called Calvary Chapel down in Fort Lauderdale. If you want to go there, we can go there. I think she used to go, I think it was Willow Creek or Willow Brook. We would go to every Christmas with the kids when we would be up there. I mean, just a mega church, like insane. Like, I don't know how many people sit in that place. It's got to be 20,000. I mean, I don't even know. It's like nuts. So we ended up rolling down to Calvary. We're sitting in the back, we put the kids in the daycare. We're sitting in the back of the church. Now I've got, my mother-in-law sitting to my left. I got my wife at the time sitting to my right. I'm in the middle, in and out of AA since I'm 16. At this point in time, God, let's see, I'm 57, whatever. I don't need whatever age I was then. So the pastor does his, I guess, I don't know what you would call, his sermon or, his service. And then what they do is at the end, they do what's called an altar call. And the altar call is, hey, does anybody want to come up to the front of the church, turn their life over to Christ? We're going to play a song, and wait for you to come up. Now you're talking, this church holds 6,000 people. So this is not a small church either. So I'm sitting there at the end of this service and, they played the song and I'm thinking to myself, when somebody goes up to the front, then I'm going to go. I mean, I could feel my wife's eyes, my mother-in-law's eyes, like, they seeing through my head, like they could see each other right through my head. And I sat there and I sat there and I sat there and they played the song. This goes on for whatever, 3-4 minutes and not one person goes to the front of the church. Now you're talking a church where tons of people are bringing their addict friends and, their family members that are in trouble. They tell them, hey, I've been to the church hundreds of times since, hey, you come I'll go up to the front with you if you're nervous, this or that. I mean, I've never seen it where at least 50 people go to the front. Never. So this day, nobody goes to the front and man, am I happy. Because now I'm not going either. I'm not going to be the first guy. I'm off the hook. So I'm just sitting there. The pastor comes out. Now, he must have felt like he didn't do a very good job because he was kind of, you could tell he was a little bit, he was a little bit irked. And I could word verbatim tell you what he said. He said, with this many people in church this morning, I can't believe there's not one person here that's in enough pain to come to the front. So I'm going to talk to the one alcoholic. You know exactly who you are. You're the guy that doesn't mind making an idiot out of himself and embarrassing his entire family. So you're the guy running around the party with the lampshade on his head. Now, I was already up and on my way, bawling like a little baby. I mean, this guy did not know that I just embarrassed my family driving around nude in Woodfield Country Club in Boca, smashing into a guard gate, running around nude. He didn't know. He had no idea that happened. It was literally like I got called out by Christ in front of 6,000 people. And I walked up to the front of that church bawling like a little baby. And after I got up to the front, I don't know how many people came up behind me, but it was a lot of people. So that was pretty wild. Sorry to get a little emotional with that one.
Well, you know what? Thanks. Because for you to get vulnerable, and it takes a lot of courage for you to get vulnerable like that. Obviously, it touch moves and inspires you. It was real for you. That means something to you now.
Sure, of course. Yeah, sometimes God wants you alone. From that day forward, I never bought another stock that went up and I wound up homeless. But while I went through that whole thing, I knew I was going to be okay. So,
well, even as a Jew, to me, Jesus was an outlaw. He was radical. He was a great rabbi. He was counterculture. I love him. And Tony, I appreciate you sharing. And, to be able to go from, let's call it surfacey story time entertainment down to
it's a real
where it's touching you. It's an honor for me to be able to be with you. That's what I get out of this.
This has been Jeff Stearns, Connected Through Cars.